This is Coach Jason Ballard, and I'm a business wingman. Over the years, I've learned a lot from working in our family construction business, serving as a senior officer in the United States Air Force, and running 12 different organizations around the world. Many people helped me get to where I am today, and it's my mission in life to serve as a personal wingman to others. That's what this podcast is all about, providing knowledge, tools, resources, and mentorship to help people soar to their highest altitude. Welcome back to the Soar Higher podcast. This is your host, Coach Jason Ballard, and we're excited to be with you today. We've got a really special episode in store for you today. Today, we're going to be talking about how your limitations can become your greatest strengths. A very inspiring story from someone that went through a tragic event that caused them a disability, and how he took that and changed into a different kind of person that is an inspiration for us all to be. He did not let one thing define him in a negative way. He took it and went in a very positive way with it. And boy, we can all learn from that today. And so today we have the privilege of having Chad Foster on the show. Let me tell you a little bit about Chad. Chad's an inspiring, he's an inspiration in resilience and overcoming the odds. He lost his eyesight at the age of 21 while he was at college, but would go on to graduate. And actually, he was one of the first, in fact, the first executive graduates from the Harvard Business School Leadership Program. Very impressive to even get in there and to be the first blind person to graduate from that program. He would go on from there to serve as an executive in numerous Fortune 500 companies, and would ultimately lead him to writing a book called Blind Ambition. We're going to talk a little bit about that today. That has taken him all over the world as a motivational keynote speaker that has talked to thousands and thousands of people each and every year. So, Chad, welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you, Jason. Appreciate you having me.
Yeah, we're excited to have you. Chad, as I've gotten to know some things about you, I just can't help but be motivated by you. Um, Tell us a little bit about you and where all this got started. You were hanging out at college one day, and then like something happened and you lost your eyesight, and then everything changed. And so talk us through how that happened, and what led to you becoming blind.
So it's an inherited eye condition called retinitis pigmentosa, and I knew that I had it at a younger age. My parents noticed where I had problems walking in poorly lit areas at about 3 or 4 years old. They took me to Duke University Medical Center, where they diagnosed me with RP, retinitis pigmentosa. And the doctors told my parents that they should sign me up for a special school for the blind. And instead, my parents decided to sign me up for soccer. So I went on and lived an active lifestyle, played sports growing up. I did play soccer, played football, played basketball, all the things. Could see okay during the day, never really could see that well at night, and knew that I had some limitations to my eyesight. And usually I found out what those were by running into stuff. So I would bump into things, whether that's, water trucks or downspouts or whatever, you name it. I ended up in the hospital so much they would question both my parents and I in separate rooms as to whether or not they were abusing me, but they weren't abusing me. The truth is, I was just finding out the limitations of my eyesight by bouncing off of things. And that happened for a while. Still could see pretty well during the day. I played sports and drove a car and rode bikes and motorcycles and jet skis and all those things. And then when I was in college, my eyesight really began to fade. And, I was at university, was studying to go into the medical field because I wanted to help other people. And then after I went blind at 21 years old, I wasn't even sure how I was going to help myself. So I switched my major to business, lost about 3 years of university work, and had to start all over. I had to relearn how to learn. I was a visual learner. It turns out that's not all that helpful when you can't see. and ended up having to relearn how to learn, and became a better blind student than sighted student. I had to develop a new learning system where I'd listen to each recorded lecture twice, listen to the books on tape that my mom read to tape for me. My mom literally read every single business book to audio cassette for me. I listened to all those books twice. I listened to the recorded lecture twice, had a note taker. I ended up making straight A's in college from that point forward, and the dean's list for the first time, and went on into the corporate world where I started in the tech industry. But obviously, as you can imagine, a lot of shifts, a lot of turmoil going through that, a lot of emotional uh, change, a lot of social change, a lot of physical change, like a lot of discomfort, just tremendous amount of discomfort, not, not being able to do things that my friends could do, not understanding, why me, had that whole why me mentality for some time. It was emotionally uncomfortable. It was physically uncomfortable. It was socially uncomfortable. And I think honestly, that's a big part of why I'm at where I'm at today, is because my life has been an experiment of living outside my comfort zone. Everything in my life has been pretty uncomfortable. And so I'm used to uncomfortable things. And so now I realize that discomfort is actually not the enemy. It's actually a friend, because when you're uncomfortable, you're growing. And so I've grown quite a bit throughout the course of my life, starting back when I was just a young child, trying to figure out how I was going to navigate all these unique situations.
Yeah. So you could see well enough to, ride a bike and do, play soccer, play sports, all those kind of things. And then
Yep. Yeah.
over time it just kind of got worse and worse and worse up to the point where you
Yep.
were in college and it just kind of finally just kind of now so you can't see at all, right? You're
No.
completely blind in both eyes?
Completely. Yeah, I got some light perception, which is why I wear sunglasses all the time, but there's no useful vision. The only thing I get is light on my eyes that hurts. And so picture, if you will, going to get your eyes dilated and then stepping out into the sunlight with no way of shading your eyes from the sun, where you can't focus the light. It's just painful. That's what I get, if anything. And so it's nothing useful at all. There's literally zero useful eyesight that I have. And so that's why I wear shades pretty much all the time.
Yeah, and that's interesting because I don't think a lot of people know that. A lot of people that do have visual impairments, wear sunglasses. Like, oh, why are they wearing sunglasses? Is it hide the fact that their eyes are closed or something, or
Right.
whatever that may be? Think of like Ray Charles or
Yeah.
people like that,
Stevie
Ronnie
Wonder. Yeah.
Millsap or Stevie
Yeah.
Wonder.
Yeah.
Those kind of folks, and the sensitivities there. People just don't really think about that. So, yeah, it makes a lot of sense. So, you're a young guy, 21, having fun at college. So, how did that really change? I mean, you talked about, you had to learn differently, but did that, how did that affect you, I guess, like socially? Did you feel awkward? Did you feel,
Oh, yeah.
um, I guess, what was the extent of which that impacted you?
I don't know how it didn't impact me. I mean, it affected everything. I, for so long, tried and wanted to see okay. We ask kids all the time what they want to be when they grow up, and none of them say a blind person. So
Yeah.
it wasn't what I wanted to be. And I was trying to get by. I didn't use a cane. I was trying to get by, and, didn't want to have to face the fact that I was losing my eyesight. And so I did my best to see, almost pretending that I could see, not really pretending, but really trying to not, you know, to not have to give in to this closing reality, this darkness that kept closing in on me. And it's really stressful, when you're trying to see things and your eyes just aren't cooperating, and you're trying to function in a sighted world when you can't see that well. And in many regards, I like to think of it honestly as if maybe I was trying to pretend to be somebody I wasn't. I was trying to see okay
Mm,
even though I could not. And it was very stressful. It's a whole lot easier being totally blind than it is half-sighted, which is
really?
something that would not have occurred to me beforehand. Oh yeah, yeah, because when you're totally blind, you don't have to stress as to whether or not you can see to cross the street or to get through a building or to get the homework assignment off the board or, to handle social situations, all those things. You're trying to do it the best you can, but your eyes just aren't really functioning that well. They're not performing. When you're blind, you sort of relinquish that expectation. Like, okay, I need to
Yeah.
get a dog to guide me around. I can't I can't see the traffic. I have to read it with my ears. I have to, instead of reading the board, I have to get my information in a different way, audio format or whatever. I walk into a social setting, people see the dog, the sunglasses. Most of them can figure out that I can't see that well. And so there's a lot more grace for that sort of thing. And it's just a lot less stressful than walking around trying to pretend like I can see okay, or trying to outrun this pending darkness that was closing in on me. And so it made it a lot easier actually after I went blind than being
Yeah.
half sighted.
I found it interesting in, your book, Blind Ambition. You talk about, being going from victim to visionary. And I love the word visionary, right? Here's somebody that's got a vision impairment, being a victim to visionary. You're a visionary, even though you can't see with your eyes, but you still have vision. And so, was there I'm assuming there was a point, like when you first, went through this process when you were 21, that you, just maybe kind of down on yourself, or maybe you were in that victim state. How long did you stay in that victim? I don't know what to do and why me? How long did you stay there? How long did it take you to, kind of transition out of that into a different way of thinking?
I was there for a while, several months. I was in the woe is me victim mentality, and it didn't change really until I went to Leader Dogs for the Blind to get my first guide dog. I was there and I rolled in and had this poor me victim mentality. I'm rolling around, wondering why this happened to me. It didn't happen to any of my friends. They had no problems at all. And I get there on campus and I start meeting the people who are also there to get a guide dog. And some of them had multiple impairments. Some of them
Hmm.
were on dialysis because they had diabetes, in addition to being blind. Some of them had mental impairments as well as being blind. And then I'll never forget these girls there. And these girls, two girls, were deaf and blind. And
Mm.
they were getting a dog to be independent. And the only way that we could communicate with these girls is to talk with an interpreter who would sign into their hands. And that was literally the only way that they could communicate. And despite their unimaginable challenges, these brave souls were getting a guide dog so that they could travel independently. So for me, it was almost an instant kick in the chest, like, my goodness, here I am over here whining about my situation, and I'm not facing half of what these folks are facing, and they're facing it with such living courage. It made me ashamed of my pathetic attitude, my self-pity that I'd had for myself. And so, almost on the spot, almost instantaneous, certainly before I left that 26-day experience in Michigan, had a completely new attitude, completely new outlook on life. And it hit the reset button to me. And that's when I learned that, happiness and perspective and success in life it's not like, happiness is not a feeling and it's not an emotion. It's a decision that you make. It's a perspective that you take. It's the way that you choose to anchor yourself for the things that you're grateful for in your life. And it hit me really hard at 23 years old. A lot of people wander around trying to figure out how to live a happier life and would seem to have everything on the surface. They would seem to have health, wealth, happiness, family, all the things, but they're not. And it's because a lot of times they're waiting on happiness to come from external factors, some external event to create happiness for them. And true happiness really doesn't come from any of that. True happiness comes from inside of you, and anchoring yourself to gratitude and choosing to take the perspective of what you have versus what you lack. And sure, you want to have achievements. I want to have achievements. There are goals that I want to help nourish myself and push me forward. But my happiness isn't dependent on those things. True happiness
Yeah.
is much deeper than that.
Yeah, I think that's so true, Chad. I think you're spot on there. Happiness is a decision. You said it perfectly. It really is a decision. You can wake up today and decide that today's going to be a good day. You can wake up and decide you're going to, show up to work or show up at breakfast with your family or show up anywhere
Yep.
with a good attitude or just going to listen today or just going to, you know, be the best person you can be, even if you don't hit a home run today necessarily, right? And so,
Yeah. Yeah.
at what point, so you went to this place and you worked with these other folks with impairments and how to I guess they guided you through what it was like to have a dog and the dog uh, walking with you in life and being with you. How did that change things for you? When you came out of that, did you feel like a sense of like more freedom? You could like go do more things now that you have a sidekick there next to you, or did it take a while to continue to build that?
No, that was pretty instant too. So there were a couple of things. So yeah, there was more independence for sure and more mobility, but I think maybe just as importantly is it forced me to be unapologetically authentic to who I am. And what I mean by that is, before I was trying to pretend like I could see okay. I was trying to walk through the buildings and get to class on campus and all these things, even though my eyesight wasn't working all that well. And so when I got the dog, it was this symbol, this ambassador that, hey, this guy can't see as well as other people. He's got this dog guiding him around. And it lifted a lot of weight off my shoulders because no longer did I have to try and overcompensate for this lack of eyesight in my life. It was, oh, there's something going on here. And it made me being authentic easier, but it kind of forced me because you go into a university classroom, you're not hiding that 100-pound German Shepherd, right? I
Right.
mean, you got to own that. It forced me to own it. And that was really liberating for me, being forced to own the thing that I'd been trying to overcompensate for and even hide for quite some time. And it was really empowering once I did that. The thing that I'd been trying to hide, I now owned and became unapologetic about it. Like, this is me, it's part of me. It's not what I signed up for, but this is what I'm dealing with, right? And I'm not going to apologize to anybody for it. And that was a really empowering experience for me, both from, like I said, independence and mobility, but also just taking ownership and not having to feel like I needed to apologize for the set of cards I was dealt in life.
I think that's so powerful, Chad, and I think it's true in life in general. People run around in this world today and, they're busy and they got all these things going on and they try
Yeah.
to look a certain way on social media, talk a certain way, and pass off a perception that things are a certain way. And I don't know, just a lot of people I see out there, they never have a bad day. They got the best wife or husband ever, and it's just like
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, like life is just awesome. They never have a bad day, kind of a thing. And I think people spend so much time trying to drive that perception or create or maintain this kind of perception that they've got it all together and they are super successful in their job and they're the greatest parents ever and they never miss their kid's soccer game or whatever that may be,
Yeah.
going on
Yeah.
trips all over the world and they're just smiling and laughing and I think that's great. I think a lot of people are genuine in what they're putting out there, but a lot of folks that I see out there are not. But yet, interesting enough, when you look at the statistics of the world of people being depressed, people being, unhealthy
Yeah.
mentally or physically, when you look at the real world facts, I think the things that people are doing to try to live up to these things in their mind create a lot of problems. They're creating more problems for themselves than to just be you, be happy being you, be comfortable in your own skin. I think that you're a
Yeah.
great example of that. And thank you for sharing that part of your story. I think that's amazing.
Right. We do have a lot of people out there who are trying to live up to some pretty unreasonable expectations of some idealized version of perfection, which doesn't really exist and it's not really relatable.
Yeah.
The rest of us mortals, right? We have ups, we have downs. Life's hard. Not every day's perfect. We have kids who have good days and kids who have bad days. And I have good days and bad days. And you know, I think that's relatable. You find me somebody who wakes up every day and occasionally doesn't have a disagreement with their spouse or disappointment with their kid. It's like, okay, does that really happen? I don't think so. Just on Instagram and Facebook, right? Um, like
Yeah.
that's not real. You want to talk about real? Like let's, but people don't post that, and it's a shame too because that's how you draw people in. That's the rawness and vulnerability that creates
Yeah.
connection with people. It makes people want to follow you and want to learn more about you because you're being real, you're being human.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Chad. And so I want to pivot. And talk about some other things that I think are amazing about you. I mean, you got an incredible story. You overcome some significant adversity that some people would never face. Um, but that wasn't good enough for you, man. You went to college, you finished, you made really great grades, you kind of moved on in your life, you overcome that obstacle, and then it's like, okay, I graduated. You go out into the workforce, and not only do you work for some Fortune 500 companies, some great organizations out there, but you went to the top. You were a senior person. You climbed the corporate ladder. You were a consultant. You were an expert in technology. And I just find it fascinating that, a guy that has some challenges with eyesight is in a very technical space that, has a lot of focus and attention and detail, to get technology right. You can get one keystroke off in the tech world and cause some issues. In fact, I want you to talk about this a little bit, that you created the first CRM, customer relationship management software for the visually impaired. I read that the some folks in Oracle didn't think it could be done, and you ended up proving it could be done. So, how did you decide to navigate the Fortune 500 space and then go on to do all these amazing things? Walk us through that journey a little bit. I'm excited to hear this.
Sure. So my first job out of college was with Anderson Consulting, as they were back in the day. They're now known as Accenture, and so I took a job in their consulting side of the house when I left the University of Tennessee. And part of my job there was lots of different things. It was marketing, it was finance, it was sometimes technology, writing code. And so I ended up figuring out that the software that I needed to use, the software that spoke to me, called JAWS, it's a screen reading application. It's what transcribes what's on the screen into audio output for me. It didn't work with everything out of the box. And so what did I do? I picked up an electronic book, a Word document that was a manual on how to write this code to program this software. And so started digging into that and trying to figure out, how do I engineer this software? Because I need to be able to do my job and I can't really rely on other people to connect it to other applications. So it didn't work with, for example, our timesheet application when I was at Anderson. And so I had to figure out how to make it talk to that timesheet application, because sometimes these enterprise applications just didn't work that well. And a lot of reasons as to why that's the case, but you can program it and make it work with other applications. And so I started teaching myself how to do that, and did that for myself just to be more effective and productive in my job so that they didn't have to hire somebody to come in and write the code and do that. And so got pretty good at it and ended up moving on from Anderson. I was working at another place, software startup, and had a buddy of mine that I'd worked with at Anderson come to me, and he's like, "Hey, man, I've got a client. Got a client over here. They've got a customer who's blind, and uh, this blind guy can't do his job." It was at the time a program that was it's called Siebel High Interactivity Framework. So Siebel is a CRM application. Oracle had bought them, and so I said, "All right, let me check it out." So I sit down and I start studying this program and looking at the architecture of it. It's a thin client environment, which means it runs in a browser, which is kind of normal now. Back in 2005 and six, not as normal, right? Most stuff was called like a Win32 application, traditional like client server application, meaning you got the separate application on your computer screen. It's
Everything
not run
runs
out of a
directly
browser.
on the computer. Yeah, it's not
Yeah,
didn't have all the servers and all that stuff. Yeah.
yeah, it's not buried in like your Chrome browser or whatever. This was buried in a Chrome browser. I don't think it was Chrome. It was actually Internet Explorer, if people can remember what that was back in the day. But and then it had these ActiveX controls in it, and so I figured out a way to map the HTML source code to the ActiveX controls to the form elements on the web page by reverse engineering the HTML source code. And so I sat down, I wrote some code, took me a couple of months, and built a solution so that this guy could do his job. Well, later on, I get on a call, another client is interested, somebody contacts me on one of these listservs that I belong to, this email distro list, and they say, "Hey, we got a customer who needs help with this Siebel program. Can anybody do anything about it?" And I responded back, "Yeah, I can help out." And so I ended up getting on the phone. I'm talking with this prospective client and with Oracle and with the maker of the software, the screen reading software, and everybody's saying, "No, no, this can't be done." Oracle said, "No, we've looked into it. It can't be done." And I said, "Well, let me let you talk to my client. I did this for them about a year or two ago." And so I've got my client there and they're talking with them. They're like, "Actually, yeah, it can be done. Chad did it for us. And we've been using the software solution for the last year or two." And he's been, our employee has been very productive. And so from that point forward, Oracle started referring me business. They started sending people my way because they couldn't figure out how to get it to work, but I had figured out how to make it work, how to do that crosswalk between the HTML source code and the ActiveX control and the forms and all those things. And so that was cool. It resulted in some nice referral business. And my wife used to think I was just kind of playing on the computer. And then I started doing that for a little while and bought our first vacation home. She realized, oh, I guess maybe he's actually doing something productive with his time on the computer. Maybe I should take him a cup of coffee, and, you know, make sure he's really comfortable there. Is there anything
Yeah.
else I can get you, sweetheart? You keep doing what you're doing. So
Oh, that is funny. Well, you know what, Chad, they say, if you lose, some, part of your abilities, that the other, senses, the other abilities kind of kick in and become stronger. With losing your eyesight, did you notice like your hearing was better or your ability to think was differently, or did you notice, how your body adapting to that at all?
yeah, I think you pay more attention to the remaining senses that you have. So if you think for just a second, most of what you take in to your mind is visual because it consumes so much of the sensory input that we get, right? It's mainly visual. It's the way most people learn is visual. Well, when you switch that off, you've cleared up a lot of brain capacity. What are you going to do? Well, it's I kind of say tongue in cheek sometimes, like, what else am I going to do? Like, I'm thinking, I'm listening, I'm like, I've got nothing else to do. So if you think like most
Hmm.
people, most of what they consume is visual, 80 to 90% is visual of the information they consume. You've literally freed up 80 to 90% of your brain capacity. And so, what are you going to do with it? Certainly, you pay more attention to the other four senses, what you hear, smell, taste, and feel. So, you're more dialed into those things. But yeah, you have more time for reflection and contemplation. And that's where I come in to this idea of having better vision.
Mm.
Vision is not what you see around you, like that's eyesight. Vision comes from what you see inside of you, and that involves going deep inside of you and not outside of you. And so I think vision comes from within, and that's why I think it's important for all of us to create that spaciousness, to have time to sit and contemplate and reflect. And see really, are we on the path that we want to be on, and you know, what course corrections do we need to make along the way?
I think you just said something very, very powerful. I've never thought about it that way before. When you think of vision, you're thinking of like, where are we going? And what needs to happen to get there, and goals and strategy around that, right? People think of vision, it's kind of some futuristic state of something, but you defined it as something on the inside. It wasn't this, I mean, I guess it could be futuristically based, but it's not this, oh, well, in 4 years from now, I'm going to have a, house in the hills or whatever, right? Like you describe that differently as internal, like share, how did you come to that realization? How did you come to the point of defining it that way? I think that's powerful.
Well, I think vision is, we tend to think of it as an optical thing, but I think it involves more creativity than just what your eyes are saying, right? There's more to it than just reflecting what your eyes are telling you. I think that's eyesight, looking at what's going on around you. I do think, yeah, vision could be, and for me, it often does involve what do I expect in 5 years from now. But that doesn't necessarily come from anything that I've seen. It comes from what do I want for myself in 5 years, in 10 years, in 15 years. And I sure hope that's not coming from what I'm looking at. That needs to come from deep inside of me. Where do I want to be? And then how do I get there? And all these things. It's not something that is driven by eyesight. I think it's just it has to come from deep inside of each of us. What do we want? And having the ability to understand, you know, how can I navigate the obstacles that I need, and what really is possible? What is the art of the possible for my life? And what do I want out of it? And how do I put myself in a position to achieve those things? And that really, it's got to come from inside of me, right? I don't see how it comes from anywhere else. And so when I talk about the tools that I've created to help me get there, a lot that came from sort of the same thing, like the anatomy of resilience. When I teach people the pillars of resilience, what does it take to think more resiliently? It all comes from, how I've chosen to digest and reflect on my situation, and what are the mental shifts that I need to make in order to move my mindset from being a victim to a visionary. And so it comes from the shifts that we need to make inside of our own minds and hearts to move to that place. But certainly it's not something I don't think that you could just look at and go, oh yeah, that's it. I've seen that in the picture somewhere. No, no, it's much deeper than that.
Vision is not about eyesight. Boy, that is a great tagline. I mean, that is not just a tagline, but I mean that is the way you're talking about. I mean, that is so true, and I think so reflective. Thank you for sharing that. And speaking of vision not being about eyesight, one of the amazing things that I see with you, that I do see with not only my own vision of you, um, but the things that you're doing, right? I mean, you are a downhill skier. You are, an expert in Brazilian jiu-jitsu. You jump out of airplanes. I know people that are perfectly healthy with no disabilities that wouldn't do some of these things. Like, so what inspired you to just kind of be fearless and to just do things you love in life and try new things and kind of put yourself out there in life, even with the disability? I mean, that's pretty amazing stuff. Like, what happened? We're like, I think I'm just gonna get on some ski boots and go down the old snow snow incline here, and hopefully I don't hit a tree. Like, what?
That's the
How did
worst
you
that can
do
happen,
that?
right? Um,
Yeah.
well, the net of it is everybody's born someday and everybody dies someday. But are you choosing to live in between those two times? And so the clock's ticking for all of us. My clock's ticking, your clock's ticking, everybody's clock's ticking. are you willing to take the chance on having regrets in your life? And I'm not. There are things that I wanted to do in my life, and certainly there are limitations now to what's possible given the fact that I cannot see. But there are ways around some of those limitations, like downhill skiing. I get a guide who directs me down the mountain verbally, so we're both mic'd up with Bluetooth earpieces and helmets, and it can be done. It's not bulletproof, but there's a system for managing the risk, and so because of that, I'm willing to move forward in pursuit of that goal because I know I can manage the risk, and I feel like it's doable, and it's a lot of fun doing it. And I think the same thing is true for some of these other outlets. I just feel like a lot of people think that fear is something to be avoided, and I've learned through jujitsu and other things, frankly, but certainly in jujitsu, that fear is not something to be avoided. It's something to be confronted. Like fear is the direction of travel. Move towards fear because on the other side of your fear is growth, is opportunity. And I don't want my life to be lived based on decisions that are anchored to fear. I don't want fear to own me. I don't want fear to control me. Certainly, fear probably helped us a lot when we were out, living in primitive times, and we had, animals chasing us and those sorts of things. But what we're doing today, let's face it, right? It's nowhere close to that. We get fear from what? Like, okay, applying for a job and not getting it. Is that really fear or is that ego? We have fear like, okay, I'm going to get onto the mat and train and I can't see. And I know these people are skilled martial arts practitioners. They're not out to kill me, right? They're out to train. They want to beat me, and that's fine. But they're not out to kill me. So is that again, is that fear warranted or is it ego talking? And so I think with jujitsu, with skiing, with all these other things, it's like, what is the real cause for your fear? Is it ego or is it something genuinely harmful that we're talking about? And a lot of times, if it's just the ego, we have to put egos aside, because ego can be a real barrier to progress. And in jujitsu, like you can't have ego, you can't have pride. Pride will definitely get in the way of learning. And so it's all about checking your ego at the door and having that beginner's mindset. Every time you step on the mat with the technique, you may have done that technique 100 times. Maybe in some cases, like some of the black belts, the real experts. I've been doing it for a while. I've got my purple belt, so I'm kind of middle of the road. We've got people who've been doing it for 15, 20 years, and they approach the technique with the same level of scrutiny, care, and attention as they did on day one. And it's about having that beginner's mind when you approach something, and that's helpful whether or not you're talking about a martial art or you're talking about something at work. You're talking about being with a loved one. Are you giving your loved one the same attention that you did on day one? Or are you kind of in this mode of complacency and taking them for granted? And so there's something really beautiful when we can approach things that we've done over and over and over with the beginner's mind and just stay curious and figure out like better ways to do whatever that thing is. And so I feel like it's a great lesson whether or not you're doing a martial art or skiing or jumping out of a plane. It's like, okay, are you willing to make decisions out of fear? And what can future you live with? If you're so fortunate to get to your golden years and you look back on your life and you didn't get what you wanted out of your life, is it better to know that you didn't get what you wanted out of your life because you tried and you failed, or because you never even tried? Like, I mean, if you don't try, your odds are zero, literally. Like, they're zero. If you do try, your odds might not be 100%. Maybe they're only 10 or 20%, but they're still higher than zero. And so I'm from the school of thought that I would much rather fail in pursuit of my goal, whatever that happens to be, than fail because I didn't have the courage to try, because I don't want to live a life with regrets. I want to know where my boundaries are. And the only way to know my boundaries is to keep pushing my limits. And a lot of times I've been able to redefine my boundaries. And you can too. You can redefine your boundaries if you're willing to try, if you're willing to push, if you're willing to lean into the discomfort, if you're willing to settle into the terror, settle into the fear, not let it control you, step through the fear and start looking for the next best step and whatever that is, whether that's, it doesn't have to be something as extreme as what I'm doing, but maybe it is, right? Maybe it is something that extreme, or maybe it's something simple. But I know this: when you start doing something, you start small and start demonstrating to yourself that, oh wait, maybe I can put on these bindings and get down the bunny slope. And before you know it, you're like, well, the bunny slope's not much fun anymore. Let's go to a green. And then you're on a green. Okay, well, let's go to a blue. And before you know it, you're on a black. And that's true whether you're skiing on the mountain or you're chasing your next career milestone, or achievement in maybe in your personal life. So I just don't want to live a life that has regrets, because I feel like we only get one that I know of. We only get one, and I want to make sure that regardless of the circumstances that I've been dealt in my life, that I've lived my life to the fullest.
Yeah, well said. Well said. I'll say it a little bit differently. What's really holding you back out there? You're listening to this show, you're listening to Chad talk about his life and his philosophy on life and how he overcome all these obstacles that he faced, which are, most people, couldn't even really fathom, I don't think. But really what's holding you back, right? God created you with God given skills and abilities that are different than everybody else out there. Whether you have a disability or you don't, you've got something to offer. And if you're just going to sit around and be in this protective cone and never go anywhere or do anything or be scared to, put yourself out there, scared of, ridicule, scared of failure, fear of this, that, or the other, then you're really robbing people around you, your family, your friends, people you live in the neighborhood with and work with or whatever, robbing them of opportunities where you can serve and you can contribute. You're not here on earth to just be in receive mode all the time. You're here to give. You're here to take those skills and abilities that other people may not have around you and make a difference, contribute to some type of a better world, and while living a fulfilled life at the same time. And so, I think Chad, you're an awesome inspiration. So, as we kind of are wrapping up the show here, let's say somebody's stuck out there in the world that's listening to the show. They're stuck in their career, stuck in their life. Maybe they had a bad day. Maybe their spouse left them and they're getting divorced. Maybe they, got in a car wreck and they're disabled from that, or whatever. They're in a place where they may just be struggling a little bit. What is your best advice for them as someone that has gone through some pretty tragic things himself?
Learn how to tell yourself the right stories about your circumstances. So I could have sat around after I went blind and just chosen to tell myself that I went blind because I've got terrible luck. Or I could have chosen to tell myself that I went blind because I happen to be one of the very few people on planet Earth who has the strength and the toughness to overcome that and use it to help other people. Now, technically, both of these stories can be true. Whereas, one story paints me as a victim, but the second story, the better story, is a Jedi mind trick that transforms my disability into my strength. And so you look it up, the definition of this, it's cognitive reframing, basically, is what it comes down to. What are the stories that you're going to tell yourself about your circumstances? And it's really important to get an intentional handle on what those stories are, because you, like the rest of us humans on this planet, will become the stories that you tell yourself. And so you could choose to tell yourself a story that paints you as a victim, or you could choose to tell yourself a story that reframes your struggle into your strength, like I did. I chose to tell myself that, hey, this blind thing happened to me. This struggle is because I'm uniquely qualified to deal with it because of my strength and toughness and ability to help other people. And I didn't have any of those qualities as I was going blind. It's not like I had any reason to believe other than the fact that I wanted to tell myself a better story, that I was uniquely qualified. I had no distinguishing characteristic in my that said, Chad, you're definitely uniquely qualified. It wasn't like that was obvious. It was the path that I chose to tell myself. And guess what? You can do the same thing for your situation. You can tell yourself a better story about your situation and your circumstances, and you will become the stories that you tell yourself. So if you choose the right story, you can actually take an unfavorable situation and actually flip it and turn it into a favorable situation to where not only can you help yourself, but you can help other people.
Yeah, thank you so much for those inspiring words. It's defining your story and putting your best genuine self out there, because those things will open doors that will open doors that will open doors to things in life that you probably didn't even know existed, and create a life of a lot of joy and peace and happiness for yourself. Chad, what an incredible person you are. Thank you for your time today and taking some time out of your busy schedule to chat with us about you and um, your story, and just how your outlook on life is just amazing, and how that can be a positive thing for somebody else out there. Way to give back. And so, folks, you don't want to miss Chad's book here, Blind Ambition. You will love this book. If you certainly love this podcast, you will definitely love this book. Incredible man. Chad, if people want to connect with you, if they want to connect with the book, if they want to book you to be a motivational, inspirational speaker in their company, Chad is all over the globe speaking to people, companies, different organizations on a regular basis. How do they contact you? What's the best way to engage you if folks want to follow up with you?
Yeah, go to chadefoster.com/soar hire. Got a page there with some things for your audience. But from that website, obviously that's my website. They can find my social channels. They can find videos and blog articles that I've written, press page, testimonials, all kinds of different information about my programs, a contact us form, all that's there. And again, it's chadefoster.com/soar hire.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Chad. We're also going to put that in the show notes, make it simple for everybody, no matter where you're listening or watching this podcast. We're going to put that in there for you, make it real simple. Chad, thank you so much. It's just an incredible um journey you've been on. And so thank you for making that a positive experience. And, the impact that you're making, telling your story is making an impact on people that will, I think, change people's lives and get them to think differently and rewire their thinking, that they can do things. The art of the possible is there. And other people like you have overcome things to become the great person that you are, that I know you and your family are proud of. And so I just think that's powerful. Folks, that's it for today's show. You do not want to miss next week's show as well. Next week, we're going to be talking about how you being the dumbest person in the room can take you places you've never even thought were possible. It's going to be a great show. Have a great week, everybody.